Hello, this is a little introduction to the audio version of the Bhagavad Gita. I thought I'd do this introduction in four short videos. Now, and this is the first one introducing the actual book. So the question is, what is the Bhagavad Gita? Now, the Bhagavad Gita is not only the most revered, but also the most popular religious text within the Indian Hindu tradition. And it is essential reading for anybody that is involved with yoga philosophy or the Eastern wisdom teachings to do with India. It's not a long book. It is actually 700 verses from a much larger book called the Mahabharata. And the English translation of this particular book, which is really a conversation between two people, is the English translation is not a long one. It takes 3 hours to read the Christopher Isherwood and Swami Prabhavananda translation that this text is about. So it's actually a short book. Now, a little bit about the English translations of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, to the best of my research, there have been at least a dozen English translations of this book done, the first one being in the 1870s. The present translation was done probably in the 1940s when extremely well-known British author called Christopher Isherwood became very interested and involved and converted to Vedanta, for a branch of Hindu philosophy, and settling in Hollywood, he became the disciple of one of the first Indian gurus to settle in the West, Swami Prabhavananda. And between them, they worked for a long time on a translation, on an appropriate English translation for this book. And this was published roughly in 1945, and has been considered by many as the most beautiful English translation of the Bhagavad Gita. And it was certainly the most popular read translation for the common person until probably the 1980s, when newer versions became available and there became more variety to read from. So that is about that particular translation. Now, I'd like to tell you a story of my involvement with this book and this particular translation in particular. I came across it in the 1970s when I was going through some kind of spiritual crises. When I was about 22 years old, that kind of age. And having read the book, it made a huge difference to my life, to the point it was a life-changing experience. I became very absorbed in reading this book and trying to assimilate its content. And in my personal case, I attribute many mystical experiences I had at the time to this particular book. So as a result of my particular love of this particular book, it became kind of the love of my life and has been my personal Bible for the last 40 years. Now, in about 1982, I made an audio recording of my reading of the book for my personal use. And the whole recording was in 2 C90 cassettes. And as it happened, I ended up using these cassettes and copies of them again and again and again and again. And for about 15 years, listening to these cassettes in the radio through the audio cassette in my car in Britain, I can honestly say that that's all I did. I didn't listen to the radio, didn't listen to other music, because I found that listening to the words of the Gita completely took my attention, and it was like listening to a new thing every time. Consequently, I probably have listened to this two cassettes in the region of possibly 500 times, to the extent that the text has become almost by heart to me. Now, when my cassettes became completely clapped out and cars no longer came with cassette recorders, I I thought I'd either make a new audio recording for a CD or do something like that. But it transpired. I started to search the internet for good audio copies of the Bhagavad Gita, but actually could find none. And there were some that were available for downloading, which were of very appalling quality, where the person attempting the English translation completely mispronounced all the Sanskrit words and the Indian names and things like this. It then struck me to make a audio translation for for myself. Thinking about it, I had the advantage of knowing the text almost by heart, which would allow me to recite the text in clear English, like an actor that already knows his lines, and that has makes a difference. So when I started on this project, the Gita has got 18 chapters. Some are quite short and some are rather long. So I decided to divide the 6 longest chapters into 2 parts, 1 and 2, so that the result was approximately 24 readings of differing in length from 10 to 15 minutes, something like that. So so I prepared for this and and with my friend Tim Lee, who did all the audio work associated with this, we recorded the whole text, and this has been sitting in audio files, and it's now being prepared for release on to the general public for free listening, downloading, etc. And I hope this will be of use to you.